CanPL.ca Newsroom for this week. Marty Thompson and Charlie O'Connor-Clarke. Now, as the intro switches to video, I'm going to ask the audience which one of us is in a hotel room. That's right, it's me. A lot of people giving me compliments on the art behind me from last week. That's not my art.
You didn't choose that art. That's Winnipeg art.
I may or may not try to take it off the wall just before we recorded last week, but it's right in the wall. You can't move it, so that's okay. We've learned to love it.
Well, they can't have you stealing it, right? Like
exactly. Are you so? Is it kosher to move stuff around in a hotel room? Like that's fine, right?
If you're there for a month, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I've just like moved some furniture. Like I've put like the dresser there. You know, like I don't really like the desk. Like I feel like that's okay. But yeah, you're right. Maybe not when it's only over a weekend. So, and yeah, maybe try to move some paintings, but they can't be moved. Okay, so we're now 5 days away from the start of the CPL season. 2021, the kickoff presented by Volkswagen. And Volkswagen Canada is back here with Return to the Stage, as we're now going to be talking about Forge FC and York United. Both teams in the bubble as of a couple of days ago. York United actually hit the training pitch for the first time last night. Just headed down to Bison Field, just beside IG Field for their first sessions. And their first sessions, you know, some of their first sessions rather as a full team because of these COVID-19 restrictions in Ontario. And this is like, I think this is what we have to talk about with York United, Charlie. Like it's. I think they had 2 weeks. I think they had 2 weeks of. I believe it was 10 players aside is what we were hearing. So that's not even with all your players. You know, Dom Zator was in Calgary after his loan spell in Sweden. Like that's really what we have to talk about with this team, right? It's the lack of training. Yeah,
it's really, really difficult. I mean, 10 players isn't even a full squad. It was certainly it could have been a full York squad at times when, you know, Joe DiChiara got sent off or something last year. But
love that.
Yeah, it's really difficult, and I think that's the biggest reason that we'll have to temper expectations for this squad going into the season. Like, it's hard to expect a whole lot out of them right out of the gate, just because of how many of the teams they'll be playing will be just so much more together and ready, especially with how many new players there are at York.
Yeah.
So this might be more of a slow burn process over the season.
And yeah, they're taking on Cavalry in their first game. I believe that's on Sunday afternoon. That's a tough game. That's a really tough game to start. And I mean, it's interesting talking to some of the coaches because you're right. Like, you know, Rob Gale with Valor, we talked about them last week, but he was pretty adamant on, hey, look, the Island Games was like a good showing for us. It allows us to grow into the season. And you're right. That's kind of the only way that we can look at this York team. What's like? Give me a couple of standout players. Like, you know, Dom Zator we talked about. There's a bunch of new faces on here. What's like one or two that stick out to you?
Well, I'm really interested in a lot of these kind of new international players coming in, that because I know that York is very excited to see them. I mean, you're Gerard Lavernes, and they've had Nicholas Hamilton, you know, on the roster for a little while, but we're going to see him for the first time. And I'm really interested to see these sorts of guys. And I'm kind of excited to see this returning young core again as well, right? The Max Ferraris, your Lowell Wrights, your, you know, Ija Halleys, these guys who had some opportunities in the Island Games last year, looked pretty good at times, had some great moments, but we're still very young and quite raw as players. And I think it'll be interesting to see if they have improved since last year, and if they get kind of a bigger role with the team this time around. So that might end up being the story for York, especially early on, I think.
And that's the kicker. Like York has a big squad.
Yeah,
right? They're here with the full 23, and they've got depth in those positions. Like we're hearing that Tariq Mohammed has looked quite good coming in, and he's challenging Didi Nabzi for a spot, right? Like they have that depth that I think right now, especially, you know, with the pandemic and coming into the bubble, that other teams just don't have at this spot, right?
Yeah. There's certainly a lot of players competing for pretty much every spot in the lineup. I don't think there's many that are nailed on. Like not even the goalkeeper's job is nailed in yet.
Yeah. Okay. So, first game, Nate Ingham or Giansopoulos for you? Who's starting? This is the big debate.
it's a really tough one. I think Nathan Ingham is going to get the start to begin with. But it would not surprise me. In fact, it might surprise me if Nico Giantsopoulos didn't ultimately end up at least getting a pretty long run in that job, because I am really excited to see him. And I think, I don't know, when you see a backup goalkeeper go to another club, you kind of feel like there's some sort of an understanding that there's going to be more minutes at the new place. But I don't know. I think obviously York has stuck by Nathan Ingham for 2 years, and they've really liked him over there. I don't know. It is a really tough question, because I don't know whose choice it's going to be. I don't know what exactly it's going to come down to.
Well, yeah, I you hit the nail on the head. Nico Giantsopoulos is a goalkeeper. Had him on the show. Funny dude, but also good. From coaches around the league, people always talk about, he was a couple, like Dylan Powley was another example, right? A backup that through 2 years that people thought, hey, he should maybe get a number one spot. So yeah, difficult prediction. I think Nico will be there. He'll be, and I'll see him at IG Field chasing a brick of cheese going down the hill to IG Field. Okay, let's talk about Forge FC. There's always a lot to talk about, or not a lot to talk about with this team, depending on how you want to go with it. Again, a standard 2-time defending CPL champions. You all know the drill. Concacaf League last year, we talked about them ad nauseum. Maybe what's something that's different about this group coming into the kickoff? Because, it's funny how David Edgar leaves, Dan Jakovic comes in. There's always just sort of this, there's continuity. But what's something that you maybe expect to be slightly different with this team?
Well,
or nothing.
Certainly, probably not a whole lot. I think the attack is actually quite different this year from what it was last year. I mean, Tristan Borges is coming back, so it's not all that new, but wasn't at the Island Games. And then you've got 2 international forwards coming with Josh Navarro and Omar Brown. And you've got some of the kind of guys that have been there a while on the way out. I mean, obviously Anthony Novak is heading to Cavalry, but guys like Marcel Zajac or Cadell Thomas, I mean, guys that have been around for the 2 years, they've kind of freshened it up front a little bit, maybe. Because I think this was something that Bobby Smirniotis mentioned a few times last year, is he would like to see them finish a few more of these chances, right? And maybe start putting games to bed a little earlier and put some more goals up on the board. So I think adding a few more elements to that attack is something that's really going to be interesting for them this year. It's not hugely different. And you still got Chris Nanko in there. You still got Moba Booley. But I think that's definitely where the biggest change is. I mean, objectively, there's 3 new guys up front and 1 new guy in the rest of the whole squad at the moment.
Yeah, but Babuli looked sharp in training the other day when we were down at IG. I think he's going to be there. I think he's going to be their talisman. I think he's going to be the guy now. Like it's great. I love him as a player, but I mean, after CONCACAF League and everything like that, like there's no way you don't look at that player and say he has to be the man in the middle, right? Playing the number 9 like he did in CONCACAF League, right?
Do you think Babuli will outscore Tristan Borges this year?
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, what do you think it's going to be Borges?
No, I think I agree as well. I think it'll take some of the load off Tristan Borges when he can maybe just operate more in those wing channels and create a lot more. Just maybe, kick it at Babuli's head for a goal.
If only it was that easy. Okay, we have to talk about CONCACAF League as well, because the draw happened last week. Forge drawing CD FAS of El Salvador, FAS, however you want to say it. I'm not going to be able to pronounce the full name of the squad. We have to talk about a player that's on this team that's familiar to people in the CPL.
Charlie? Yeah, this is awesome, man. So, CD FAS, their star number 9, their starting striker, is former Halifax Wanderers legend, you might say, Luis Alberto Perea.
Incredible. What are the chances of that? And again, you telling me that this morning, you text me that, and I was like, if Halifax won the final last year, could you imagine?
That would be pretty crazy. They'd be going, yeah.
Perrin making a triumphant return to Wanderers grounds, getting to maybe reenact that goal celebration that he had in the opener.
Hopefully not, though.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe we can just talk about briefly this team in this draw. Games coming after the kickoff. Hopefully, fingers crossed, of course, with the pandemic, but not exactly a great draw. You know, it came down. It was funny. You're watching it. There were a couple teams that seemed to be a bit more favorable. There's a team from Puerto Rico that Forge could have been drawn against, but this one doesn't really seem to be the best one of the bunch, right? Especially in the preliminary round.
Yeah, it's kind of a tougher draw. I mean, maybe this level isn't all that dissimilar to, Municipal Limeño, who Forge played in the same round last year. But yeah, FAS, like, they're the most successful team in the El Salvador League. They just won the Clausura League title. I think they won all three playoff rounds on penalties, though, including one of them over Municipal Limeño.
Nice.
So they're definitely one of the stronger teams in El Salvador, probably a little bit stronger than our beloved cartoon piggies. They actually went out in the first round of the Concacaf League last year to a Nicaraguan team. And that was a bit of an upset, I think.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's nothing. This won't be the most difficult team that Forge has played in this competition. But it'll probably be a slightly better, slightly more technical team than Limeño, and probably a little bit faster and more technical than, say, Arcahai or something like that. Or Antigua GFC that Forge played in 2019. So it could be worse, could be better, somewhere in the middle, but Forge is in with a pretty good shot.
And we should mention, winner of that tie will take on Independiente of Panama, which is, I mean, people will already know that name from following Canadian soccer. That's a tough draw as well. That's a
very tough draw. I mean, we've seen them. We've seen what they did to Toronto FC, I guess, 3 years ago. I don't know.
2 years ago.
I don't know if Omar Brown will be allowed to play in that game, because he's technically on loan from Independiente with Forge. So maybe not. But yeah, that's another tough team. Panamanian clubs have traditionally done pretty well at this level, but it's kind of weird that the order for Forge this year will be the same as last year, with an El Salvador team and then a Panamanian team, and then I don't know where they'll go in the third round. Hopefully, if they get there, but it's pretty comparable to, I think, in their recent, or especially last year's draw.
Mm-hmm. So Forge starting the 2021 CPL campaign on Sunday, 1 p.m. Central Time, local, 2 p.m. Eastern Time on OneSoccer. Of course, the whole thing getting started on Saturday, same game time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. FC Edmonton taking on Atletico Ottawa, again on OneSoccer, all live from IG Field. Before we go, we should mention that today is National Indigenous Peoples Day. I know that there's a big pregame ceremony happening and being planned for IG Field for the opener on Saturday. But we just also like just to take some time to let everyone know there's a great feature from me. There's a great feature that was coordinated from Pacific FC and from some communities on Vancouver Island through Hope and Health. James Merriman, assistant coach from Pacific FC, spent a lot of time this weekend writing that up. Just go ahead and read that on CanPL.ca if you get some time today. It would be greatly appreciated. It's a great story. There's the Pacific players traveling. They had a trip planned to go to the north end of the island. 10 hours. One way before the pandemic nixed that, and there's they're going to these communities and they're making an impact and they're making relationships, which again it was an unbelievable experience this weekend to talk to some of the people involved with it. Honestly, it was incredibly heartwarming. Okay, so that leads us with this episode. On Friday, we'll finish up Return to the Stage presented by Volkswagen with Ottawa and Halifax. We'll have some surprises as well as we lead into the final, I should say, our final week without games, Charlie.
Yeah.
It's so our excited. Final week. We made it.
We did it.
6 months later, We did it.
Thank you to everybody that's stuck around this far. It's hopefully going to all be worth it this weekend.
Yes. As someone told us the other day, we've been doing the hard yards. We've been talking this whole time without games. So we're excited for that to change.